Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer, part 5 of Shocking Teachings of Christianity with Kalavai Venkat. Let's welcome him. Venkat sir, Namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel. How are you?
Namaskaram. Thank you, CAR. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. And this is going to be something where we probably don't need the help of a PowerPoint presentation. So I would
That's
like you
good.
to jump right in, sir. Over to you.
All right. Okay. So today we are dealing with part five of Christianity. In the first four parts, I'll give a very quick recap. Part one, we reveal a lot of suppressed truths about the Virgin Mary. We found that she was married twice. She had seven children at least, and then she had probably a lover too. That's what we saw in part one. And then when we went to part two, we looked at some of the details of Jesus, which most Christians are unaware of. For example, we saw that Jesus was married twice, he had children, and then we also saw that one of the recent exhaustive studies by Harvard Medical School neuropsychiatrists came to the conclusion that Jesus was possibly psychotic. He was mentally ill. That was part two. Then we went to part three, where we discussed about the question of the historicity of Jesus, whether a historical Jesus existed or is he a myth. That's what we covered in part three. Then we came to part four, where we talked about the family tomb of Jesus and why the discovery of the tomb destroys the very foundation of the Christian faith. Because Paul in his epistle says that Jesus was crucified and he was resurrected 3 days later. And if this is not true, then Christianity is a lie. And which means you should never expect to see the mortal remains, the bones of Jesus or his family. But that's exactly what the archaeologists in Israel found. And then that's what he covered in part four. So Christians are left with a very dicey situation. Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you so much. Before we start today's topic, a small request to all of you to please like this video. And it is coming in portrait mode in Meta or Facebook or Instagram, and it is coming in landscape mode in YouTube. So over to you, Kalavaiji. Thank you so much. This is like information purposes only. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. So for Christians, there are only two choices. We have demonstrated beyond any doubt that the story told by the New Testament, by the Bible, is a bogus story. It's a forged story. It's not true at all. However, Christians have to either accept that Jesus is a myth, which debunks Christian beliefs, or they have to accept that the family tomb of Jesus has been found, which also debunks Christianity. Today, we are going to dive into some of the teachings of Christianity because a lot of times advertising and propaganda trump the truth. So, if you take Islam, for example, Islam claims to be the religion of peace, but we know the truth. Similarly, Christianity claims to be the religion of love, and today we will see that's not at all true, because most of the times, the most obnoxious teachings can be repackaged as teachings of love. That's what Christians have done, and today we are going to look at some of the teachings. Let's start with the first teaching. This happens in Matthew 15, chapter 15, verses 21 to 28, and Mark chapter 7, 24 to 30. So, in this case, a pagan woman, a non Jewish woman, and we saw earlier that the earliest Christianity was all Jewish. They were called Jewish Christians. They were Jewish people, and the earliest teachings of Christianity were only meant for the Jews and not for anybody else. So, in these verses, a pagan woman, also known as the Syrophoenician woman, she comes there with a child. Her child is seriously ill and dying, and she comes to Jesus, and Jesus was a faith healer. So, faith healing is, of course, uh, charlatanism. It's just nothing but fraud. But in those days, especially in Israel, medical science was not well advanced. So, if you take Greece or India, India, for example, had Ayurveda, and it was pretty advanced for those days. Greece had similarly pretty advanced medicine, but Israel did not have. So that gave enough room for charlatans like Jesus to come out and then practice faith healing. So in this case, this woman comes to Jesus and she says, "My child is dying. So Jesus, please save her." Jesus responds that my powers of healing are only meant for Jews who are my children. It's not meant for non Jewish people whom he equates with Dogs. This is a terrible thing. So today, let's take the United States. If a white doctor were to tell a black patient that he is only going to treat white people and not blacks, he'll be right away fired. And if he call the black people dogs, he will go to jail or he will lose his medical license. Or if you take India, if a doctor had to say, I'm only going to treat people of my own jati and I will not treat others, that person will lose his medical license. But that's what exactly Jesus does. He refuses to treat and then he calls the woman and her child, the dying child, dogs. So after bestowing canine status on these people, uh, Jesus literally forces that woman. That woman, she's a mother. She begs to Jesus. He says, I accept my canine status. Okay, even dogs deserve a little bit of mercy. So please treat my child. Then Jesus is pleased. This is Shade and Friday. He takes pleasure, ultimate pleasure, in the suffering of the others. And then here is a helpless woman, and he forces her to accept that she's a dog. And then he condescends to treat that woman. So this is one of the teachings of the Bible, and very few Christians have even evaluated that to figure out whether it's a moral teaching or an immoral teaching, and we can very evidently see it is immoral. Let's jump to the second teaching. This is probably the most popular teaching within the Bible. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. Sermon on the Mount, as we discussed in the previous episodes, appears in its entirety only in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5, 6, and 7. So, in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus teaches that the blessed are the poor, the weak and the meek shall inherit the earth. But we all know that poverty is not something that should be glorified, because if you want to treat your child, take the child to the hospital, you need money. If you want to educate your child, you need money. If you want to lead a comfortable life, you need money. So poverty is not something to be glorified, but Jesus says, blessed are the poor. But this is the tactic, this is the template which the Christians have used from the time of Jesus to cheat and to hoodwink the gullible people. So the French scholar Voltaire, as well as Mark Twain, the American writer Mark Twain, both of them made an observation that religion was born when the first charlatan met the first idiot. The first cheat meets the first idiot, and the religion is born. Now, which religion are they referring to? They both are referring to Christianity, because both Voltaire and Mark Twain held Hinduism in a very high regard. They both praised Hinduism as a religion of wisdom, all the Eastern religions as religions of wisdom, and then they were directing their criticism at Christianity. So Christianity is a religion intended for the most gullible people, the foolish people who cannot evaluate the truth. And the likes of Jesus and the various pastors and padre, they all take advantage of that. They exploit the poor. And that's how all of these religions came into existence, particularly Christianity. So Jomo Kenyatta was the first prime minister, president of Kenya. And then he once made an absolutely great statement. He said, we Africans had land, but we did not have Christianity when the white man came and colonized us. So the white man said, on your knees and pray. We closed our eyes and we prayed. When we opened our eyes, we had the Bible in our hand, and the white man had the African land in his possession. So this kind of teaching, which Jesus propagates in the Sermon on the Mount, has been repeatedly used to exploit the poor, to loot their wealth, and to colonize other people. So now contrast this with Hindu teachings. If you take the Shiva Purana, for example, it says Virabhogya Vasundhara, meaning the brave, the courageous will inherit the earth. What does it mean? It means you have to, if you want to enjoy anything in life, first you have to fulfill your duty. So you must be duty bound. So, for example, if society is attacked, then the brave within society will have to fight and defend that society. They have to fight and defend the country. That's why we have military. That's why we had Operation Sindhu. But it's only those people, the Shiva Purana says, will inherit the earth. This is a brilliant teaching because This puts responsibility in the hands of individuals, in the hands of the families, and in the hands of society. Whereas the teachings of Christianity or lies, they are meant to exploit the poor and to loot and colonize them. Please.
Kalavaji, see, one thing that I've always wrestled with as far as Christianity is concerned is they say a newborn baby has sinned. How can a newborn baby have committed any sin? The kid is just barely days old or even minutes old. How
Yeah.
can you say that this newborn child has sinned and therefore you have to atone, you have to repent, you have to do this, you have to do that? So somewhere the see
Oh,
your
yeah.
karma.
I can take that. I can take that.
Yeah, please
So,
go ahead.
so in Christian teachings, it's called the original sin. Okay. What is original sin? You go back to Genesis, the book of Genesis in the Bible, and then it talks about a talking snake. Okay. A snake misleads Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Okay. In other words, they learn to become discriminating, which is a wonderful thing. Okay. You should discriminate. Uh, you should have the discriminatory knowledge of the reality. And that's what they attempt to do. And then they are now condemned of having committed the original sin. And since, according to the Bible, all human beings descended from them, they are sinners. They are born sinners unless and until they accept Jesus and they get baptized in his name. Now, look at the incongruity of this teaching. A newborn baby, like you said, has not done anything wrong. So, why should the child be called a sinner? So, what Christianity does is from the childhood, it guilt trips an individual. It starts teaching an individual that you are a sinner, you are unworthy of human existence, you are not even worthy of being considered a human unless or otherwise you accept Jesus as your savior, you admit that you have sinned. What is that sin? Nobody knows. And then you should accept Jesus, then he will come and save you, which is an absurd teaching. But Christian Bible is full of absurd teachings. And then two great scholars they took it apart. So, for example, I'll talk about one here, Thomas Jefferson, the one of the founding fathers of the United States. He wrote the Jefferson Bible, and what he did was he examined every teaching of the Bible and then rejected all the teachings he considered immoral. As a result, he was left with a Bible which was only 19 pages long, 1 9. Okay, so this is not something new. A lot of great scholars have examined the moral teachings of Bibles and have found those teachings to be wanting in morality. Let's jump to the next one, next teaching. So this appears
An
in
interesting tidbit about Jefferson. He was one of
yeah,
the first patent examiners of free United States. Many people don't know this. There
right,
were three founding fathers who divided all the patent applications. I'm talking about late 18th century.
correct,
And they would decide who shall get a patent and who shall not get a patent. First,
yeah,
Benjamin Franklin didn't even want to have the concept of patents until one of his inventions was stolen and taken to United Kingdom and patented there. And then that company sends him a notice saying that you are in violation of my patent.
right, yeah,
It's a very interesting story. We'll talk about it later. Sorry, I
yeah,
just wanted
sure,
to. He was a
sure,
great man. Jefferson was
yeah.
a great man.
So then the next teaching of the Bible appears in Matthew 17 verse 20 and Luke 17 verses 5 and 6. So in this case, uh, uh, what happens is Jesus tells his followers, okay, you can find this in the Bible. He tells, even if you have faith in me, the faith the size of a mustard seed, then you can perform miracles. Jesus tells, if you are baptized in my name, and if you have accepted me as your savior, and even if your faith is just the size of a mustard seed, then you will be able to perform miracles. You will be able to revive dead people. You would be able to move the mountains. And even if you hold a snake in your hand, nothing will happen. It will not die. So, uh, whereas we can repeatedly find that there are faith healers, Christian faith healers, who perform faith healing on the stage, and Catholics perform exorcism. But if really they have these magical powers, why did they not use it? And if they really believed in Jesus, why did they not use it during COVID? Around the world, something like 3 to 4 million people died of COVID, right? The number could be even higher because we don't know the actual statistics for countries like China, countries like Pakistan, and other places. But regardless, at least 30 to 40 lakh people around the world died. And if faith could move mountains and faith could heal people, why did not the Christian priests, the pastors, and others perform faith healing to cure COVID? Uh, Truth is, faith alone cannot heal anything, and Christian faith healing is nothing but fraud. It is a disgusting fraud aimed at the most gullible people. And these priests and these padre, they line their deep pocket by swindling these poor people. And that is the teaching which they did not invent. It was invented by Jesus. Jesus was the original charlatan. Jesus was the original fraud. And these people are just emulating him. So we'll jump to the next teaching. The next teaching is the story of Lazarus. This is a story you find in John, book of John, chapter 11, verses 1 to 45. So in this chapter, a person by name Lazarus is dead. So his family comes to Jesus and they appeal to him to revive him from death. So Jesus comes, he revives Lazarus. Here is the question: what happened to Lazarus after that? The Bible does not even mention him. So he's not around. So we can safely conclude that Lazarus died again. How is it reasonable? Because the family would have grieved, would have poured their hearts out when Lazarus first died. Then Jesus comes and gives a false hope that he can revive this dead person. Then what we find is that there is no mention of Lazarus anywhere in the Bible. That means he was definitely not living, because living is not a possibility. But even just sticking to the Christian story, he once again disappears, which means his family had to grieve his death twice. This is not only cheating, this is an inhumane form of cheating. To give a false hope to the family that I can revive one of your family members who has died, and then not doing that, and then making them grieve one more time, that's cruel. And that's the kind of cruelty that Jesus practiced. And those are the immoral teachings that you find in the Bible. Now contrast this with Hinduism and Buddhism. If you take the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Janam, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, meaning birth, death, old age, and diseases. These are inevitable for any human being. This is what Krishna teaches. In other words, Krishna gives the wisdom that death can never be conquered. Death is natural. Death comes to everyone. So once people internalize this teaching in a single verse, Janam, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, people are not going to fear death. That's why Osho said, Christianity is a religion for people who have not overcome the fear of death and the fear of hunger. Whereas Hinduism and all Eastern religions are religions of wisdom. Go ahead, please.
Kalavai, I just wanted, I'm sorry, I just butting in. The reason is because many of us may not know who Osho is. That is Rajneesh, Acharya Rajneesh. As Rajneesh Swami, I don't, Swami, I'm missing something there. He had, his cult was very, not cult, his group was very popular at one point of time. And they had actually taken over a town in Oregon, state of Oregon in the United States, and they had called it Rajneeshpuram. And there was a big controversy, and they were all driven out of the United States, and they had to go back to Punjanagari, which is Pune. Also, when you are quoting about Sri Krishna, many of you are wondering what exactly are Sri Iyer and Kalavai Venkat up to. Look, the same Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, verse 35 says, Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha paradharmo bhayavahaha. So here the dharma means do your duty, and I would rather you die doing your duty than you submit to somebody else's rule and be afraid. This is what Krishna is telling Arjuna. But dharma is dharma. I look at it as you and I, what we are doing is we would rather die fighting for our dharma than to submit to some other dharma. Okay, this is the simplest way I can explain what we are trying to do. And all this is completely based on facts, viewers. There is nothing here that we are conjuring. We are not making up anything. So please understand it. We are having a proper discussion, a proper debate. And if anybody who wants to debate Kalavai Venkatji, I'll be happy to host it. But Kalavai Venkatji has a couple of conditions that you need to agree to. If you agree to those conditions, yes. Over to you, sir.
Those are not even my conditions. Those are Jesus's conditions. So any Christian is welcome to debate, but then you should believe in Jesus and you should follow his condition. Okay. Now, just to add to what Shreya said, I am contrasting Hinduism with Christianity. And I'm demonstrating that Hinduism is a superior religion, a religion of wisdom, a great religion. It's a dharmic religion. And I'm contrasting that with Christianity, which is a religion of charlatans, which is a religion of deceit, which has no wisdom, which is full of immoral teachings. That's the contrast we are making. And then now we talked about Bhagavad Gita. Now let's also talk about an example from Buddhism. So there is the story of Gisa Gotami in Buddhism. So what happens is a woman comes to the Buddha and she says, "My child has died. Oh Buddha, can you revive my child?" So Buddha responds to her and says, "All right, I'll do that on one condition. You go to any house and you get one mustard seed from that house on one condition. That house should have never seen a death. Nobody in that house should have died." So this woman leaves and then she goes from home to home. She comes back in the evening and she tells the Buddha that, "Oh, master, I went from door to door and I realized that death can never be overcome." The same, what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janam Mrityu Jara Vyadi, the Buddha tells it in the form of story. He makes the woman realize that death is inevitable and you cannot overcome, and hence you have to perform your duty for those who are living as well as those who are dead. That's why you do Pitrukarya and other things. And he educates and he imparts wisdom to this woman, whereas Jesus, we saw, was deceiving his gullible followers, okay, giving the impression that he can revive them from dead. But that's why he threw the challenge open. Okay, if that is the case, why don't you go and why did you not cure COVID and then save 30 to 40 lakh people? And today there are millions of people, including children, who are dying of cancers and other diseases. So why don't you invoke the name of Jesus and cure it? Why do you need medical college? Why are the popes, Teresa, whom Christians call mother, okay, of course, she's a pretty evil. She was a very evil person. So Teresa, every time she became sick, she ran to the most expensive hospitals like Johns Hopkins in the West and other places, even when she just got ordinary, flu. Whereas she would be denying healthcare and treatment for gullible people, the poor people. So this is complete deceit, but this is what Christianity is built on: lies and deceit. So a lot of people would ask the question, why are we even criticizing Christianity? Why don't we just live and let live? That's what we did. Christianity has been in India for more than 1,000 years. All these years, we hardly criticize Christianity. Uh, we are excellent hosts. The Syrian Christians of Kerala are probably the oldest community. They have been around 1,000 or 1,200 years in India. And we hosted them, we treated them like royalty. We never criticized the religion. But did they reciprocate? No. Time and again, they have been abusing Hindu Dharma. Christians have been doing it for more than 200 years. But even more importantly, um, Christians inflicted some of the most gruesome pain and suffering on Hindus, on Indians. I'll take one example. Between 1880 and 1920, over a 40-year period, over 10 crore Indians were exterminated by the Christian colonial rulers, the British Christian colonial rulers. This has been beautifully documented by two scholars, Dylan Sullivan and Jason Hickel. Both of them are um, uh, academics in the United Kingdom. And then they collect all the data and then they come up with a finding that 100 million Indians, that is 10 crore Indians, were starved to death by Christian colonizers over a 40-year period between 1880 and 1920. And another great academic, his name is Philip Jenkins. He wrote this book, Laying Down the Sword. He also documents how the Christian colonial rulers targeted the Hindus. They not only persecuted, they ruthlessly butchered, slaughtered, and called them heathens. And then all this attack was framed in Christian theological terms. And then they were exterminated. And then this is not something which was isolated. It happened all over the country. For example, in the 19th century, the British East India Company attempted to impose Christianity all over India. And this was resisted by the Hindus as well as by the Muslims. So William Dalrymple, in his book The Last Mughal, documents that at that time the Mughal Empire had already declined. And there are a lot of white people who are living in India, and many of them had converted to Islam, and some had converted to Hinduism. In 1857, when the First War of Freedom begins, it is a fight against Christianity. Hindus and Muslims come together, and then they call Christians kafirs, and then they fight them. And then when the soldiers invade Delhi, they come from Meerut and they invade Delhi. The first thing they do is they line up everyone, and then they ask the white people, are you Christians or Hindu or Muslim? If they said Hindu or Muslim, they were let go. They were not harassed. If they said Christian, they were killed. This was same equally true of the Indians who had converted to Christianity. They were also asked that question and they were killed. So much was the anger and fury both Hindus and Muslims had towards Christians at the time, because Christianity had persecuted the Hindus, literally starved Hindus and Muslims to death. Okay, it starved Indians to death. So millions of people lost their life, and this was not only isolated to India. There is a wonderful academic by the name Professor David Stannard. He wrote this book, The American Holocaust. He talks about the extermination of Native Americans by Christians. The white Christians, they come, they colonize America, and then they exterminate more than 100 million Native Americans. They did the same thing. A woman would be stripped naked, holding her infant in her hands, and there are portrayals. This woman is still holding a child, and the child is screaming. This woman is being burnt alive, and in some cases, dogs are let loose on this woman. And this child is crying. Okay, the child is hungry. The woman, what does she do? It's her child, and she's going to die. The child is going to die. She puts the child's mouth to her breast and feeds the child one last time. This is the kind of cruelty Christians inflicted upon everyone, and all of them come directly from the teachings of the Bible, the teachings of Jesus. And to give one more example on this, during the Second World War, Hitler exterminated 6 million Jews, 60 lakh Jews. What did he do? He repeatedly quoted the words of Jesus. The devil is the father of Jews. Who said it? Jesus. Who repeated? Hitler. And then Hitler also subsidized and published the Bible and the writings of another hate monger by name Martin Luther. Martin Luther lived in the 16th century, a vicious hate monger, a fraud, and a demagogue. And then his writings were subsidized and republished by Hitler. So time and again, what we see is everywhere, Christian teachings have only brought about terrible suffering and harm to the rest of humanity. And talking about the extermination of the Jewish people, Norman Beck, a Lutheran theologian and a Christian himself, he points out, he wrote an essay called Removing Anti-Jewish Polemics from Our Lectionaries. And in that he summarizes that there are at least 450 verses in the New Testament, many of them uttered by Jesus, which are hateful, which are anti-Semitic, which spew the worst form of hate on the Jewish people. So Christianity is a comprehensive religion of hate. It spews hate on everyone, especially those who cannot defend themselves. And it has brought about the extermination, killing, and persecution of millions and millions of people, including the Hindus. That's exactly the reason why we should criticize Christianity, because it's our duty. If a religion can exterminate millions of people, we should go after that religious ideology, we should defeat it, and we should eradicate it from society. But there is something even more important about this. Now, Christianity is very much similar to Islam. And we know that Islam divides the world into Darul Islam, which means the house of Islam. The house
Before you
of,
go there,
yeah,
before you go there, so sorry, can you get back the numbers there, please? Yeah,
sorry.
viewers, what this is it's Ofer Binstock. Ofer Binstock, and I'll give you the reference link, his article, that if India was not invaded, whether it is the Muslims or then the British, okay, the normal progression, looking at some other countries during the same period, such as China, if it had been allowed, then India would be at 2.065 billion today. And we are only at 1.4 or 1.2, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. So close to 803 million missing Hindu souls. Where did
Yeah,
they go?
yeah. Not only
Take a look
that,
at that reference. Yeah, please
not
go ahead.
not
Yeah.
only that, there are two other absolutely great academics whose books Hindus should read. One is Angus Madison, and the second one is Utsa Patnaik. Okay, Utsa Patnaik is an economist from JNU. She's a leftist historian, but then that should not, deter us. Truth matters, no matter where it comes from. And Angus Madison, is a British historian, sorry, British economist and economic historian. And they both have demonstrated that the British looted $45 trillion from India during colonial rule. Over 200 years of colonial rule, they looted $45 trillion. That is almost, something like 10 to 11 times the GDP of India. Okay. In other words, 11 years of GDP of India. So just imagine if every single rupee that Indians have is stolen, taken away from them, not once, but for 11 years consecutively, how much society will be impoverished, how many people will die. That's what the Christian colonizers did to us, and they destroyed our society. They killed people. They killed millions and millions of people. I just pointed out just over 40 years from 1880 to 1920, the Christian colonial rulers exterminated, killed 10 crore Indians. And why should we not respond to that religion? Why should we not criticize that religion? That's absolutely needed. Now, let's jump to,
So 10 crores is 100 million. Out of that 800 million, 100
yeah,
million would be 10 crores. Just wanted to give
correct.
some numbers, apples to
Yeah,
apples comparison. Over to you.
exactly. So I said that Christianity and Islam are very similar religions, right? And we started with talking about Islam. Islam divides the world into three: Darul Islam, Darul Harb, and Darul Aman. What is Darul Islam? Darul Islam is the house of Islam. Okay. In other words, the entire world belongs to Islam, and the Muslims should exterminate others, subjugate others, impose jizya on them, and convert the entire world to Islam. That's Darul Islam. Then you have Darul Aman. Darul Aman are the useful idiots. For example, Western Europe and America, they know nothing about Islam, but they were advertising self-righteousness, and then they were signaling virtue, and then they invited a lot of Muslims to come and settle down in this country. They refused to engage Islam critically, and as a result, a lot of Muslims will treat the United States and Western Europe as Darul Aman, meaning these are friendly nations. We can slowly get in and over a period of time take over. Third is Darul Harb, meaning the house of war. Why is it a house of war? Because those societies belong to Kafirs. India is a Kafir society. India is a Darul Harb because it's a Hindu society. It's a Hindu nation. So Islam seeks to totally destroy and subjugate and convert this into an Islamic society. The Christian teachings are identical, and there is a brilliant scholar by name John Horton, and John Horton is a medical doctor and anthropologist, and he analyzes Christianity. And for example, we know in Islam there is a word called haram. Haram means that which is forbidden. Okay, so halal and haram. Halal is that which is allowed, and haram is that which is forbidden. And this word haram comes from Arabic. However, it's not an Arabic word. It originally comes from Hebrew. It's the original word is called haram. Okay, haram means exactly the same as haram, that which is forbidden. So Christianity, John Horton points out, divides the world into the world of believers, that's Christians, and then the world of non-believers or the heathens. And Jesus repeatedly says in the Bible that he will make the non-believers kneel down in abject submission before the Christians when the world comes to an end. So Christianity is identical to Islam. Okay, it's just a mirror image of Islam. It spews the same kind of hatred and has committed terrible sins against us. And hence, we should never hesitate to criticize Christianity and to eradicate that ideology and convert all the Christians to Hinduism through Garvapsi. That should be our objective, and no concession on that. Let's jump to the next teaching. That this is the story of the adulteress you find in the Bible. So this happens in John chapter 8, verses 1 to 11. So a woman is so Jesus and 12 of his disciples are uh, idling away their time. They are sitting down and doing nothing. And all of a sudden, a crowd drags a woman. They bring her over. They accuse her of having committed adultery. and they want to stone her to death. Now, if you are a man and then you are accompanied by 12 other men, 13 of you, and if a woman is targeted, what will you do? You will go to the defense of that woman. You will tell the mob, stop it. Okay. Why are you hurting this woman? Okay. You will do your best because you are 13 men and that's your duty. If you are man enough, you should stand up and defend that woman. Jesus does not. Jesus gets frightened. He's a coward. We have seen that time and again in the Bible. When his teacher, John the Baptist, is being arrested, Jesus gets frightened. He gets on a boat and he runs away from that site. Okay. So Jesus repeatedly displays cowardice throughout his life. And what happens when he's crucified? When he's crucified, he cries helplessly. He says, God, God, why have you abandoned me? Okay. So he was a coward. Okay. He never displayed any courage. And then same thing happens when this woman is accused of adultery and brought before Jesus. Jesus pretends not to notice what is going on. Instead, he's doodling on the ground. He takes a stick and he starts doodling on the ground. So, but the crowd is not stopping. They come to Jesus. They must have thought he's important enough. So they come to Jesus and they say, Jesus, what do we do with this woman? Okay, so she's an adulteress. Should we stone her to death? So you should remember that Jesus, uh, in the Sermon on the Mount, in Matthew 5:17, he says that he has not come to the world to get rid of any of the Jewish laws, like this barbaric law, which says if a woman is accused of adultery, she must be stoned to death. This is exactly what ISIS did. This is exactly what the Taliban and others did. So Jesus does the same thing. He teaches, he has come to uphold and fulfill such brutal, cruel teachings. Now, if he wanted to be consistent, he should have said, all right, go ahead and stone the woman to death. That would have been cruel. That would have proved that Jesus was an immoral fellow. But having promised that he has come to fulfill such laws, now Jesus chickens out. Okay. We always say, Trump always chickens out, taco. Okay. Similarly, this is Jaco. Jesus always chickens out. Okay. So that's a phrase we should all start using. Okay. Jaco. Like taco, we have Jaco. Okay. So he chickens out. Then what does he say? He tells them, whoever is sinless among you, throw the first stone at this woman. What a cruel teaching. We should ask the first question. The Bible says that Jesus was sinless. Then why did he not throw the first stone? Did he get doubt that he is actually a sinner? And we can look at these teachings and we can find these teachings are sinful. What kind of person will cast the stone at a woman? Only a psychopath will do that. Who will stone a woman to death? A psychopath. So what does Jesus do here? He allows the psychopaths to decide for themselves whether they are sinful or sinless. What if only one of them had thought, hey, by the way, I am a sinless person? Because only those who are self righteous and those who are absolutely fanatical and um, bigoted, they will attempt to stone a woman to death. And those people are never going to think, hey, I am doing something which is sinful. They will think I am doing something righteous. Okay, I'm killing this woman because she's an adulteress, and adultery is a terrible thing. So says the Bible. So will those people introspect and say, hey, wait a minute, have I ever sinned in my life? And so should I back out? No, they won't do that. Those people are so certain, they carry their belief with such certitude that they will cast the first stone. But this kind of pathetic teachings is what characterizes the Bible, Christianity, and the teachings of Jesus. So let's wrap this up with these final observations. So we talked about the 19th century when Indians understood how dangerous and evil Christianity was. And Indians understood that Christians were committing mass genocides of Indians, both Hindus and Muslims. And Hindus and Muslims actually came together in 1857 to wage the First War of Independence, which was actually a religious war. This is what William Dalrymple points out. William Dalrymple goes through more than 20,000 contemporary letters written in Urdu and Persian in, in the 19th century, in the first half of 19th century. 20,000 letters. And then he comes to the conclusion, this was a religious war. And because Christians were persecuting the Hindus and Muslims, and Hindus and Muslims came together and they waged a religious war. And the religion, opposition to Christianity, was one of the main factors for triggering the 1857 War of Independence. Then, during those days, in the second half of the 19th century, a great scholar, an Acharya, an Advaita Guru, his name was Chatampi Swami. He was from Kerala. He wrote a book called Christumada Chedanam. So in that book, he shreds Christianity to pieces. Okay, so he shreds the teachings of Jesus to pieces. And that book was written almost 130, 140 years ago. And you'll be surprised how modern it is even today, how brilliant he was. So Hindus were on the right trajectory. So if you take Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Arya Samaj, he once quipped, he read the Bible and then he quipped, I cannot tell the difference between the God of the Bible and the Satan of the Bible. Okay. So Indians are beginning to understand, and then they were countering and checking Christianity, and Christians were responding with genocide and violence. I pointed out that in just 40 years, 1880 to 1920, Christians exterminated 10 crore Indians. That's 100 million Indians. Okay. So unfortunately, what happened was there was a counter trend, which was initiated by the British Christian colonial rulers. It all started with the Brahma Samaj, with Rajaram Mohan Rai and subsequently K.C. Sen and others. And all of these fellows, they started praising Jesus left, right, and center. They had never studied Christianity. Okay, they had no idea of Christianity or Hinduism or anything. But they were so slavish to the white colonial masters, they started praising Jesus, and then they were themselves Christians. Very tragically, another great man, Swami Vivekananda, he committed the same mistake. He started praising Jesus too. And what you can see, that a lot of these people came from Bengal. Okay, whether it is Paramahamsa Yogananda, Prabhupada, or Vivekananda, and many of them they came from Bengal because that's where the Christian missionaries are brainwashing a lot of our kids, and they started holding a very positive view of Jesus. And very sadly, that prevented a critique and uh, condemnation of Christianity, which the likes of Chatampi Swami had initiated in the 19th century. And as a result, Christianity not only grew like a cancer, but it also usurped a lot of property. For example, Christian Church is the largest landowner in India besides the government of India. And by various estimates, they own more than 17 crore acres of land. All of that was looted from the Hindus, from Indians. So how did they do that? During the colonial rule, the British uh, took away lands from Indians and then handed it over to the Christian church at throwaway price. For example, you have St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. It's right next to Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus, prime real estate. Okay, you cannot even buy property there. Even if you're Ambani, you won't be able to get property there because there's no property available. And that was so given to St. Xavier's College on a 999-year long lease. For how much? Rupee 1 per year. 1 rupee per year. This is how it was done. Virtually everywhere, our temple properties, our Hindu property were looted by the British and handed over to the Christian church. And what we should have done, and at least now we should be doing, is to nationalize every Christian institution, whether it is church or educational institution or hospital, and take away all their property and nationalize all of those. Unfortunately, for more than 100 years, our own Hindu gurus and leaders like Gandhi, they praised Jesus. They propagated this heinous teaching called the Sermon on the Mount. We already discussed today what a pathetic teaching that was, but in these people, they projected, Gandhi in particular, projected Sermon on the Mount as gold standard of teaching. That's because he never even read it. Okay, he never even understood what it was. So he just propagated this because a lot of our people were so uh, colonized. That's why Coinradels, the Belgian scholar, wrote a book called Decolonizing the Hindu Mind, because a lot of them, their minds were themselves colonized and they praised Christianity. But then in the beginning, she talked about Swadharma, the duty of the self. One of the definitions of dharma is duty. Every Hindu has a duty to fulfill. And the duty, as Manusmriti says, dharmo rakshati rakshitaha.
Yeah.
Dharma protects those who protect dharma. So that means fighting adharma is our duty. Christianity is adharma, and we should fight it. And we took a whole bunch of teachings today. Some of the teachings which are mistaken for good teachings, but those are evil teachings. And we should aim for eradicating Christianity from the face of this earth and bringing all the Christians back to Hindu fold through Garvapsi. And I told a little bit about Swami Vivekananda, something critical because he praised Jesus. I think it's a valid criticism, but Vivekananda should be admired and appreciated for using the word perversion. He did not use the word conversion. He said, when a Hindu perverts to Christianity or Islam, it's not just a Hindu the less, but an enemy the more. Meaning, he said, uh, when somebody abandons Hinduism and becomes Christian or Muslim, uh, it is perversion. It's not conversion. These are perverted minds that convert, and then the religion is perverted religion, and then they lead a perverted life because they have subscribed to a perverted belief system. And I don't have to prove much. Okay, what kind of belief system will say a woman should be stoned to death? The Bible says that. Okay, a woman on her nuptial night, Suhag Raat mein, if her husband even suspects her of not being a virgin, then he can drag her to the town square and the entire town will stone that woman to death. This is evil teaching. This is what Jesus said, vowed to come and fulfill. That religion should not exist on the face of this earth. And that's why we should criticize. And back to you, CA.
Thank you so much, Venkatji. We have a few questions. I don't know if we can have time for that. Let me just quickly go through them. Maybe 30 seconds per answer, if you don't mind, because we have a
Sure.
lot of stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Magnet wants to know, as some reports claim, is it true that there is a huge basement library in Vatican which is out of bounds to people and it contains shocking
Yeah.
information?
Yeah, it does. There is a library in Vatican where a lot of old manuscripts and books are stored, but it's very tightly controlled and regulated. So we do not know what the contents are. Yeah, if it is nothing shocking, the Vatican would have made it public, right? So, and if
Kalavai,
those,
let's open the vaults in Taj Mahal, man. You go down the basement, there are lots of
yeah,
murtis right there. I mean,
anyway,
yes.
yeah,
Let's go to
yeah.
the
But
next
anyway,
question.
so
Sorry.
if the
Yeah.
teachings are embarrassing to Christianity, then obviously they will keep it in the vault. That's what they are doing.
Thank you, Subhaya, for your generous contribution. Christianity is not bad, but create animosity for their existence as a defense to their religion, hatred for other religions by fathers and pastors.
No, Christianity is bad. Okay, let's be very clear about this. The popes, the pastors, the padre, and all of these people, they say terrible things, but then they are not inventing those. So take faith healing. There are a lot of pastors who perform faith healing, who introduced that Jesus, right? I quoted the verses. Jesus said, "If you believe in me, you can perform miracles. You can do faith healing." So these people, or the pastors, the padre, the pope, they are all fraudulent characters. They are cheats. They are charlatans. But they are simply playing the script that was written by Jesus. So the original fraud in that case was Jesus. So Christianity is bad. Okay, these people are acting bad because they are following a terrible religion.
Next question, please. Talk Super Tank, thank you so much. Thank you for great education. We run Sri Nighasa channel in Telugu to fight the deception of pastors. Please help understand why apologetics is involved and why it is even needed.
Oh, awesome. So, since you're running it in Telugu, you should also try to get Esther Dandraj. Okay, she's an ex-Christian and she's originally from Andhra Pradesh, but ex-Christian. And she also is a trained theologian because uh, she went to a Christian, um, college in the United States and studied. So you should invite her and she'll be fantastic. And why did apologetics evolve? Okay. So, as we saw in the previous parts of this series, there was not one Christianity. Okay, there are many Christianities in the first 400 years. Okay, and what we call the mainstream Christianity, that is Catholicism, uh, eventually suppressed all the others and persecuted them and emerged as the only religion. Okay, so, but why at all apologetics? Because, as I pointed out in the previous episodes, the Bible was not a revelation. It was written over several centuries, at least 4 centuries. In fact, the earliest manuscripts of the Bible, the complete manuscripts, are only available from the 4th century. Okay, so in the first 400 years, each sect of Christianity was rivaling the other sect, and they were arguing all the time, and hence they had to come up with explanations okay, that says, look, my teaching is correct. That's called apologetics. Okay. So that was their way of establishing that whatever they are claiming or whatever they are teaching is the true teaching. That's why apologetics evolved. And over a period of time, um, Christianity has faced a lot of uh, critical examination and criticism. In Europe, for example, during the Renaissance and Enlightenment period, a lot of ideas from India traveled to Europe, like the ideas from the Upanishads, science, mathematics, astronomy. A lot of this knowledge traveled from India. In fact, the Golden Road, William Dalrymple talks about that. Okay, India is the birthplace of all of these sciences and knowledge and everything, and that traveled to Europe. And people should remember, we use the word, the scholars use the word, the Christian Dark Ages, right, for Europe until Enlightenment and Renaissance started some 400 years back. Until then, it was called Christian Dark Ages because Christianity is a religion of superstition. Christianity is terribly opposed to the truth. Okay, it's anti-science. Okay, it's anti-humanity. So science was actually suppressed by Christianity for uh, more than 1,000 years, 1,200 years. Hence, it's called the Christian Dark Ages. And who liberated Europe from Christian Dark Ages? Hinduism. The teachings of Hinduism and Buddhism traveled to the West, and then a lot of philosophers. I talked about Voltaire, and people are already familiar with Ralph Waldo Emerson and many others, okay, many great philosophers. They were all influenced by Hindu teachings, and hence Hinduism uh, indirectly started posing challenge to Christianity. For example, yoga. There are about 10 to 12% of Americans who practice yoga, right? And these are all challenges to Christianity. So whenever these challenges come, Christians come up with apologetics. Okay, they write an apology defending their faith and attacking whatever they perceive as a threat to Christianity. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Next question, please. This is the last question. Abraham wants to know how the Constantine turned temple into church. Now, Hagia Sophia Masjid in Turkey. I think this happened recently, right?
No, I think this question is a bit, confusing. First of all, Constantine did not turn any temple into church. Okay, so this is the first thing one should remember. So Constantine uh, uh, legitimizes Christianity, but he himself was initiated and baptized by an Arian priest. Okay, Arianism was one of those heretical Christian sects which no longer exists. That was suppressed and gotten rid of by Catholicism. But Constantine himself was, initiated by an Arian priest. That's number one. And then the church you have, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, was built subsequently. Okay, but not by Constantine. And Constantine was just an opportunist, right? And he was ruling from Istanbul or Constantinople, and hence most of them had already converted to some form of Christianity, and hence he took advantage of that. He was just an opportunist. And now coming to Hagia Sophia, it's Princess Hagia Sophia, okay, and then it's a today it's a mosque in Istanbul, but this was only built in the 6th century. Okay, originally it was a church. It was built in the 6th century. That's roughly about 200, 250 years after the time of uh, Constantine. Okay, and then subsequently, when the Ottoman Empire comes, okay, around the 14th, whatever century it is, they convert this church into a mosque. Okay, and then they also quote all the beautiful murals and everything that were on the walls of that. And a couple of years ago, I was there in Turkey. I had gone with the family on a tour, and then they started restoring some of those murals. Okay, because those murals depicted Christian stories and the Muslims. Because if one is fanatical, the other has to match, right? These two are two sides of the same fanatical coin. And then the Muslims came and started erasing those murals. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Venkat. And we'll be seeing you again next Sunday or next Friday, I should say, same time. And viewers, we have 3 more episodes to go. Please like this video as soon as it starts, because there's a lot of stuff that happens, mud gets thrown at us for speaking the truth. And your likes can help us shield that a little bit. Thank you so much again. We'll see you very soon. Namaskar.
Thank you.